It is 6:32. We do have a quorum. We have one board member who's gonna potentially join us via remote. But I'm gonna call the meeting of the August 22nd, 2022 Indianapolis Public Library Board to order. Can we have a call to roll, Angie?
Yes, Mr. Bixby.
Present.
Dr. Machado.
Present.
Ms. Payne.
Present.
Des Salinas.
Present.
And Ms. Tribble. Present. We do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. We do not have anyone to sign up for public comment, but I do want to make sure that I read the statement because it is available to our public. At every board meeting, we open up the time for public comment. We welcome feedback from the public about our Indianapolis libraries. And this time is when the public may address the library board. Since there is no one, I won't continue with the rest of the comment, but comments as far as the parameters of that public comment section. As long as we know, as long as the members of the public is aware that we do have a section that is earmarked for public comment. And Angie, do we have any letters that we need to?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll move on then to approval of the minutes of the executive, regular, and special session. This was for the July 25th regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 25th regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Bixby.
Approved.
Dr. Machado.
Approved.
Ms. Payne.
Approved.
Des Salinas.
Approved.
And Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move on to the Finance Committee. Dr. Payne.
Careful, man. Please come on.
Oh, and we have a new member of our staff.
You answer, would you? Come on and introduce her, please.
I'm Carolyn Adams, and I'm presenting our new CFO, Lolita Campbell, tonight. To present
On behalf of the board, welcome to our team and thank you for agreeing to be with us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. So first on our agenda is the report of the Treasury report
Which page are we starting on?
on page 22.
Thank you.
So on page 22, this is month ending July 31st, 2022, which is 7/12 of the year, it's 58% of our budget. So as of July 31st, we ended our revenue at 55%, which is shy under what we should have budgeted, accomplished at 58%, just 3% less. But this time last year was at 56%. So in our expenditures, we're at 46%, which makes us favorable. It's good to be on the budget for our expenditures. Does anyone have any questions on page 22? No? So page 24 is the detailed income statement. Does anyone have any questions about this page? These pages from 24 to 26. It reflects the totals that was on page 22.
Is there anything that's out of the ordinary or anything that we need to, that you want to highlight for us? If not, that's fine.
Well, on the revenue, I do want to highlight that we did receive more refund from the citizens
energy.
Yes. So that increased our revenue for the month of July. And or our expenses look good, so it's something I can really kind of highlight from there because we're under budget, which is favorable
No,
for
that's
us.
fine. We'll make sure we're still on course, right? Auditing or?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, we still, of course. And in fact, I think we have a meeting scheduled for this week.
With the audit, yeah. So our audit's gonna wrap up this week with the State Board of Accounts in Crow.
You don't foresee any issues or anything?
No, no, that. And, yeah, we're on track too with the operating fund for year-end. Nothing unusual that we've seen come up.
No, I really went through this financial with a fine tooth comb, so just to see if anything stood out with me, and everything looks good. So thanks for anything. So we're on my day 10 here, so everything looks good.
Does the board have any questions? Seeing none, I'm assuming is the report complete? Is the
Yes.
report complete? Is there a motion to accept this report, the treasurer for audit?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carried.
So our next item on the agenda is the resolution number 44-2022.
What page is that?
That is page 41. This resolution is for the appropriation of tax rates of 2023 budget.
Anything specific you got, would you want to emphasize or highlight? Anything?
Wasn't this discussed on
Yeah.
August the 9th?
Yeah, this was part of the August 9th special board meeting,
This-
public hearing.
That's all I wanted to ask, yeah.
We went through the detailed budget there. This is actually showing what's advertised. And this is the document that actually has to be approved by the board. As a matter of fact, tonight we will ask board members to sign this upon approval
Of course.
of this budget.
And taking everything new, you're still confident that we're on solid ground?
Yeah, we're on solid ground, taking everything into account.
Any further questions from the board?
Just about the rainy day fund, would you say at $1 million for a rainy day fund?
I'm sorry, what were you asking?
On page 41 of it talks about the rainy day fund, $1 million for the rainy day fund, the adopted budget
Yes, those are expenditures
expenditures.
that we've adopted in case there's construction. Typically, we take items to the board for approval for construction.
I remember.
Sometimes we need that money ahead of time. So we built some budget in there so we can expend those funds in case we don't get them paid back within the calendar year. So we may or may not spend $1 million.
Want to make sure we go.
Yes, was it originally 2 million?
Yes.
We've been studying the numbers
Yeah.
all of last week. So this was higher, but we've reduced it. We think we just need to spend $1 million.
And
And
that's out of
any expenditure
consultation.
gets reimbursed.
And that's out of consultation with Adam in regards to facilities, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, we've been meeting with Adam Parsons, our facilities director, and Jenny Carter, our budget manager. We all met and agreed on this.
Any further questions from the board? There is one correction on our report. It says resolution 47. It should be resolution 44. It's correct on the agenda. And it's just not on the documentation that we had before. It says 47. Should be resolution 44. I want to make it clear for the board that we are voting on resolution 44. Okay? Is there a motion? You presented this for approval from the board, correct?
Yes,
Is there a
we'll
motion
make
to?
note of that change.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't see that.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 44?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on resolution 44 from the board or questions? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carried. resolution 45.
Yeah, next on the agenda is resolution 45-2022. This resolution is to set maximum tax rate for the debt service fund for 2023 budget year. And I believe this is something we do annually.
And we've talked about this with the council and everything, they're fine.
Yeah, this is something that years ago we agreed with the council that we would not have our rate over 0.0318. And this is just to formally approve that that is still an agreement by the board.
Any questions from the board on resolution 45? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 45?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on resolution 45 from the board or questions? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Mortada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Ms. Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move on to resolution 46.
That is on page 46. And resolution 46 covers the final bond resolution series 2022.
We can get a refresher. Is this something that's also in line with what the council as well?
Yes, this was approved by the council last year in September. This is the bonds we were selling in August, and it needs board approval to actually go ahead and sell those bonds. This did come out of the finance committee meeting on August 9th.
It came out of committee. We did subsequent to that, we made a slight modification to the resolution to add reference to the treasurer having authority throughout the resolution to take certain steps to get this to the closing and for the sale. And so that was the only change that was made since the time. Yes.
Any questions from the board with respect to resolution number 46? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved with the change noted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the resolution with the change as was noted? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Mortada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Ms. Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Motion carries. Resolution 47.
That is on page 69. This is the resolution for approval for the Ebsco annual print subscription renewal. And I believe this is something that's done annually.
And this did come out of the August 9th committee meeting. Lolita hadn't started yet, so I'm stepping in on that. This is for the magazines that all of our branches have. And the cost is over 50,000, so it's requiring board approval.
47.
And I remember in our discussion, we talked about how the budget's going to be shifting as more and more goes online, right?
Right, definitely, yes. And this is the true 47-2022, so.
Okay. Any further additional questions from the board with respect to resolution 47?
Just like to keep an eye on what's happening since so many of the journals and publications are going to online, what differences that would make, and just alerting us to that would always be helpful.
Okay, we can keep
Because
you
it's a
updated.
saving and it's over 50,000. So how do we actually look at something that's significant as that in terms of the online?
And also try to fight for as many copies of those online books that you can get, because I know sometimes those publications are stingy.
Right.
Michelle is trying.
So
Right.
if I could speak to that, Deb Lambert, who is in charge of CMSA, keeps a really tight rein on that and makes those adjustments. And what we're having is not even just going to digital, but actually print publications are just dissolving across the board. A lot of them are doing that. And so as those change and morph, we make adjustments with our subscriptions. So that's something that CMSA is looking at on a continual basis.
I can attest to the fact that during the year, we get notices that some of the magazines will get refunds because some of them are going to digital only.
We're experiencing the same thing at our library and we see it happening all the time now. Keep us abreast. Dollar save.
All right, any additional questions from the board on resolution 47? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
So second.
Any further discussion from the board on resolution 47? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Ms. Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Thank you so much and welcome to our team.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 6, the Diversity Policy and Human Resource Committee. Hope.
Thank you, Mr. President. No major updates from our interim HR director who's not here tonight. She's on vacation bound later this week, so we wish her well for her time off. She's certainly been working hard. Just a quick update on the CEO search process. No news from the last time, except that we are in the process of executing the extension of the posting of the position. We have circulated the revised posting with the changes that were discussed and presented at last month's meeting. The position should be posted this week. We'll close again on the 18th of September. And this is the new timeline. The Diversity and HR Policy Committee and the Search Committee will review the final applicant pool and select semifinalists for interviews early in October. And then semifinalists will be interviewed. This is a proposed schedule. We've still got to circle back with our committees. In late October, selection of semifinalists, and then finalists interviews the week of November 28th, just after Thanksgiving. So we hope and anticipate that the CEO will be in place somewhere near the first quarter of 2023. And that's the update. We're expecting to see the posting this week and to look for an expanded pool of candidates and keep them moving.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Hope. I appreciate that. I appreciate your efforts. We'll move on to Facilities Committee. Mr. Bixby.
Thank you, Mr. President. We only have one board action item from facilities. We didn't meet this last month due to the limited agenda that we had. Only a couple of things, and it looks like Adam's on his way up here to address those.
Good evening, everyone. Following up in the judge's focus on mistakes, the subject of item 7B is incorrect. Apologize about that. This is not.
What my focus, it was our lawyers.
Oh, okay. I have a phone call. Okay.
Didn't get that.
What page?
It's item 7B. I don't have the PDF page number. So the subject is resolution 48-2022, approval to amend the services contract for security and alarm response services. That is incorrect. That is the one thing that I did not change. This is an approval to amend the services contract for housekeeping and janitorial services.
So it's right on there.
Correct. So our previous contract had been with Titan Associates doing business at Sunshine Maintenance Services, our subsidiary of Titan Associates. We had contracted with them in 2014, and we had an amendment with them to extend the contract for 1 year and adjust pricing in 2017. There was an attempt to extend this in 2018. It never materialized. And then we went back into negotiations in 2020, and we all know what happened there. COVID, kind of threw a wrench in everything. So this contract has been outstanding for a while. I'm in the process, and actually my phone call with Robert tomorrow is to review the RFP for a new housekeeping and janitorial services contract to start in January of next year. But we wanted to formalize this contract through the last 4 months of this year. And that's all that this is, formalization for 4 more months of our current janitorial company.
I know there's some concern in the past about the salaries of the janitorial staff. I know we don't have much control over that, but that was a topic of discussion at some of our previous meetings. How would that be addressed, I guess, when the RFP goes out again for the bids with multiple other vendors as well?
Sure. The solution that I came up with that one, and Robert and I have had plenty of discussions about this, is that there is a federal government website for foreign labor to compare for bringing in non-US citizens compared to US citizens of average labor by location. It's broken down even more granular than just state. Similar to NAICS codes for companies, they have employer or I forget what the term is, but employer ID or employee ID type. So housekeeping and janitorial has a 6-digit employment number, and it gives a description. So what I asked for was the average salary of all employees that meet that criteria. And I gave a little calculation, and we hope to get some numbers back, and then we score according to a matrix that I came up with. So that's one of the topics that we're talking about tomorrow, about is this the best approach, and what comes about with the I'm sorry, words slipping my mind, confidentiality. Since this is public record for a public municipal corporation, confidentiality can't be 100% guaranteed. So is that something that we can or want to ask for on behalf of a private company? So that's what I came up with. That's what we're discussing tomorrow. And I hope we can come to some form of resolution for the next contract.
I'm so glad that Curtis brought it up, because we do want to really attend to the issues of equity of opportunity and bring up equity of opportunity for individuals. And so it'd be interesting to see what that contract looks like and what kinds of ways will we see the kinds of things that we raised questions about before, when some employers really were very inequitable in their approach to paying for their staff.
We're gonna focus on our staff. We need to make sure those that also work in our library have the same benefits.
And we would, of course, speak with Gwen Simmons to have her to vet anything we're doing as well.
Perfect.
Gwen is actually on the evaluation team. So I'm speaking with Robert first for the legal side of things. So then once I make sure that I am not breaking any laws, then I will give it to the evaluation team for their review. I have 5-6 people on the evaluation team, and Dana Imel, our security and safety officer, will be an advisor. So we should have 7 sets of eyes on it. I'm not on the team. I'm merely a facilitator. So actually 8 sets of eyes.
I do know that the current, they've done quite well. I've been to Central a few times, and some of the other branches, they look pretty nice, but I mean, we want to be fair to the employees that are working for the company as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Any additional questions or comments?
Yeah, you said something at the beginning of your remarks. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was kind of relating to workers, making sure like workers coming into the country.
Oh, sure. So I needed a source of information for wage rates.
Yeah.
So, and the federal government, the Department of Labor, has a website. It's Foreign Labor Comparison or Compensation. I think it's flc.gov. And what they do is that they survey U.S. companies and ask them about their wages to create this database. And then part of that database, part of that function, is allowing companies who would like to bring in non-U.S. citizens a comparison tool. And it's also freely available for those citizens, non-U.S. citizens coming in to say, okay, well, company A is offering me X. Well, I can go to this flc.gov and say, well, they earn Y, so I'm either earning above or below, and that will inform their decision to immigrate. So for lack of lack of other data sources, this was the closest that I could find outside of me calling up private companies and asking them what their wage rates were, which I presume would have an extremely low response rate.
That was the reason, Pat, that I asked about what ways are we going to really look at it in terms of equity.
Right.
Because some companies, and this is what we found before when Curtis and I were looking at the data and previous board members, that there was significant differences across the wage rates for different companies, and particularly how folks who were immigrants to this country were not getting the kind of equity of opportunity that some companies were. And so how does this play out in terms of HR? How does it play out in terms of equity of salary? How does it play out in terms of the contracts that we work with? And so using the Department of Labor surveys gives us one tool to use.
Okay, thank you.
One tool. It'd be interesting to find out what some of the unions also say about some of the equity that happens when we see different things happening with different companies.
I'm sorry, one of our board members is having some difficulties in online, but he's trying. All right, any additional questions on resolution 48 from the board? Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion from the board?
Just would like to have some more information about how those surveys are telling and what more you find out and what other tools might be available to you as well.
Sure.
All right, any further discussion or comments? Seeing and Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Vitale,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Joe Salinas,
Approved.
and Mr. Volt. Thank you.
Motion carries. Is there going to be an update on item on Garfield Park?
I have a call into Indy Parks to talk about a possible land swap or land purchase. That will drive the decision to see what land is available and what direction we actually take the building. But right at the moment, we're still planning on that being in next round of funds. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Robinson's having problems logging on, so I'm gonna go ahead and just. Oh, he's got it?
No, he just tried.
He's in the Zoom.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, I can't turn his camera on.
Can you hear us?
He should be able to.
Mr. Robinson, can you hear us, sir? Mr. Robinson? TD, can you
Yes,
hear
I'm
us,
here,
sir?
Judge. Yes, I'm here.
There he is. We can hear you. Barely.
Am I up next, Judge, or?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
We're on item number 8, the Library Foundation, sir.
all right. Thank you, and thank you for your patience. Thank you for getting me in. I appreciate it. Every month, the Library Foundation provides an update to the Library Board. We are proud to support the library's summer reading program for children and adults. Many thanks to all staff who made this possible. The summer reading program for youth, camp, reads, and more motivated nearly 20,000 children to read for 14.9 million minutes. We've called this a huge success. The foundation thanks the 86 donors who made gifts last month. The following are our top corporate and foundation donors. If you have an opportunity to thank these donors, we would be grateful. Arthur Jordan Foundation, Eli Lilly and Company Foundation. This month, the Library Foundation is proud to provide $150,000 to the library. Examples of major initiatives supported include world language computer classes, early childhood educators workshop, Pathway to Literacy, and the McFadden Lectures. That ends our report for this evening, and thank you.
Dr. Robinson, thank you so much. I do appreciate that, sir. All right, we'll move on to item 9, report from our interim CEO. Michelle.
Good evening.
Evening.
I would like to recommend confirmation for resolution 49-2022. This is for finances, personnel, and travel resolution. And all of these costs have been allocated in our budget for 2022. So my recommendation is to have approval for that.
Yes, it is correct on our agenda on our handouts. It should be, this is 48, but it is resolution 49-2022. So is there a motion to approve resolution 49?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion from the board on resolution 49? Not, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Makata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Dr. Robinson,
Maybe.
Approved.
There you go.
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Good evening again. The staff of the Indianapolis Public Library continues to focus on our vision to be a center of knowledge, community life, and innovation for everyone in Indianapolis. Under safety, during the past month, we have worked on addressing safety in our locations with active shooter training taking place at Central and scheduling the same training at our various branches. The emergency operations plan is being updated to include a response to an active shooter scenario should it occur. We hope this will never happen at any of our locations. However, we must be prepared based on current events in our nation and community. As far as system-wide communication, we continue to meet with staff at branch locations as well as hold town halls via video to communicate current priorities to as many staff as possible and answer questions. Under accounting, we are currently in the budget season and the accounting department has worked diligently to create a budget that will support us for the next year and prepare for our presentation to the City County Council. We're excited to have our new CFO on board, Lolita Campbell. Ms. Campbell brings a wealth of knowledge, and the addition to the team is quite beneficial. There is also a press release with further information about her appointment. We would also like to thank Ms. Carolyn Adams, who is our former interim CEO, for her hard work and dedication over the last 9 months. Her work has been critical to our stability as an organization. Ms. Adams has returned to her previous position as controller and will aid us in onboarding Ms. Campbell. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Under training, the executive committee participated in a retreat on August the 10th with Gwendolyn Kreider, who is a consultant, who was the facilitator. In addition, I completed the Indiana State Library New Directors Training. That training gave a comprehensive overview of the responsibilities of Indiana directors based on policies from the Indiana State Library, as well as providing resources for the library system as a whole. August 31st is the deadline for staff to complete all training competencies, and I completed that. The dismantling institutional racism and how to respond to prejudicial comments from customers trainings were both particularly informative. Staff transitions. We are bidding farewell to Michelle Burt after 22 years of service, and then Sheila Roeder after 19 years of service. Their presence will be missed, and we are wishing them an amazing next chapter. Under Patron Outreach, I recently answered a reference question for a patron who was unable to access the internet, and this was their reply after they received the information that we mailed to them. I am truly grateful for the material you sent me. It opens a door that I suspected was out there, but never knew where to find. This is an example of the work that NDPL staff do every day. The impact on our community is seen and felt. In addition to that, on Saturday, August the 20th, President Biden made a statement about the remembrance of the transatlantic slave trade. And so I just wanted to mention that quite briefly. A friend said in the book 400 Souls, one of the authors writes that we should know the name White Lion, just like we know the Mayflower. 203 years ago, people who survived a horrendous journey to Virginia would live long enough to give birth to and be joined by others who would not spend one moment of their lives in freedom. And so I would like for us all to take a moment to reflect on that and how that builds America.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle.
Could you say a little bit more about what the retreat was themed on and some of the outcomes that you were looking for in the retreat?
So what I will say kind of as an overview is that this was our first meeting all together in person. So we've been meeting virtually since April. So that was obviously something big. And Ms. Campbell was able to join us for that retreat. So that was quite beneficial. And Ms. Adams was also there. So that helped to kind of bridge that gap with accounting. So we want to increase our efficiency as a group, get to know each other better, and just kind of build a high performing team. And so we had interactions with each other. We gave feedback about things that we appreciated from different members in the group and things that we felt like would be growth areas. And so everyone did that. And then we're going to meet with Gwendolyn moving forward on some further things. So this is not the last time we'll do team building.
Really focused on team building.
It's important in order to get our entire system moving in the direction that we would like them to go, is for us as the executive committee to move forward because we're leading the rest of the system. So it was very beneficial.
In what ways will Michelle and you said 20 some years?
22
years and 19 years?
Yes.
And 19 years. How will they be recognized for such long service?
So I'm going to send a letter to both of them. For Michelle Burke, who I worked directly with. We had a going away party for her because she was part of the African American History Committee. And then I also took her out to lunch last week. So Michelle and I have worked together since we were at Central, and then we came over here to LSC. And so she's a wealth of knowledge and information, but she said that she will continue to support the library, and I believe she'll do that. So we're very excited about this new opportunity for her.
Do we have a precedent of the board sending a message of congratulations and appreciation? I don't recall us doing that, but
I
it's
don't think
just,
we ever have.
I just think it's so
100%
wonderful
behind
to do that. And if we can make sure that whenever there's, what'd you say?
No, I was just saying it would be a great thing.
Yeah, it would be, folks' background is in HR, and people want to be appreciated for that time that they've spent giving service and unwavering support to the library, and how we recognize the staff beyond is always important. So if we could send something and make that a habit or a procedure.
We can definitely get that information to the board president.
Let them know. Let them know from the
We
board.
could sign something.
Yeah.
A resolution, I like that.
Yeah.
A resolution that
Are they
come forward. with.
returning this month?
They have both transitioned out
Alright.
already. But we could still send something to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's 39 years of history. Oh, my gosh. For the library. For the library. Just like you said, they've captured so much, and we want to always value it.
All right, which leads into a little bit, I want to remind our board, not remind, just make sure we're all on board that we have training next Tuesday. Lunch will be provided. It starts at noon. Training starts at 1. And I think when, if you're able to stay for a few minutes, 10, 15 after at 3, I'm hoping we can have a link to that. We can. We're going to join us at a minimum, a call. She can join us.
Yes.
So she can, and she will give a brief overview of what she believes that she's providing in a full day for training. So absent that, or not absent that, apart from that, our next meeting, what's the next time? Oh, okay, hang on. I got ahead of myself. We're out of here.
No, not yet.
No, we're out.
No,
Oh. We have the presentation of the digital roadmap. I'm sorry. Not bad. Hang on.
I would promise to be brief, but this
No.
is my favorite topic, so I
Oh,
can't
fine.
guarantee
That's
that.
good.
All right, so you have a presentation in front of you, and I believe Joe is also going to present that. So I'm Marian McKenzie, and I'm the supervisor of digital inclusion. I work out of our programming department at the Central Library branch, and I report to Michelle Sharp, our adult services on.
Welcome.
I'm going to give you an update on what we're calling our digital inclusion roadmap. So this is a project that was laid out in our strategic plan under our digital and technology inclusion objectives. The original intention was to have that roadmap published by, I believe, December of last year. But the past year with the library, of course, has been one with many changes. So we decided to give the project a little bit more breathing room. So what I'd like to do today is give you an update of where that project is at and sort of explain why the timeline has shifted a little bit. Go ahead, next slide. So whenever I talk about digital inclusion, I try not to assume that other people are as obsessed with the topic as I am.
Thank you.
So I like to give this quote as sort of a summary for what we mean when we talk about digital inclusion. So essentially, the digital divide is the issue that we are trying to tackle. Digital equity is the goal that we're trying to achieve, and digital inclusion is the active work to reach that goal. So I oversee a digital inclusion committee. It's a standing staff committee. And what it does is it tries to find ways to address the digital divide. Now, normally when people hear digital divide, the thing that tends to spring to mind is people who don't have access to internet or access to computers. And Joe, can you see the next slide? So here is a map from Savvy that sort of shows for the American Community Survey for the past 5-year average, what that type of divide looks like for Indianapolis. So if you see in dark blue, there are areas that are heavily digitally divided by this metric. So these are households that don't have access to internet or don't have access to a computer or don't have access to both. So there are definitely areas of the city that are highly digitally divided in this way. However, as a digital inclusion practitioner, this is just the tip of the iceberg for what we mean when we talk about the digital divide. So typically when I think about digital inclusion, I'm thinking about who has access to a computer and is it an affordable computer that they can maintain and use? Who has access to affordable internet that's reliable and it has the speed to do what they need to do? Who has the skills to use those if they have access to them? And do they have an ongoing area that they can go to achieve new skills because technology is always changing? We also have to think about if something goes wrong with their technology and they need to turn to someone to ask a question, do they have support there? Or are they always one technological glitch away from being bumped back into the digital divide? And then last, we also have to consider when they access something online, when they access a new software, can they use it in a way that they can navigate in a self-sufficient manner? So that can be everything from, is it intuitive to use for an average user? It can also be things such as, is stuff presented in the language that is most convenient for someone to navigate in? And also, does the technology support a wide range of abilities? So things like, does a website support a screen reader for someone with a visual impairment? So when we think about digital inclusion from those 5 different areas, the problem broadens and there's an additional layer that goes on top of this. So again, remember, digital equity is the goal. So this is equity work. And anytime we think about equity work, we have to examine historical precedences. We have to be mindful of intentionally reaching out to marginalized communities, because otherwise we are going to come up with a fantastic plan that is not going to truly meet the needs of our community. So currently where the roadmap is we've come up with 6 themes, and these 6 themes were created through conversations with a digital inclusion advisory panel. We had about 30 different staff members who brainstormed around those 5 topics and used our racial equity framework from GARE to come up with some themes that they would like to see our roadmap address. But we don't want to get it wrong by not engaging the community and thinking about, in particular, historically marginalized communities. So if you think about that map that we saw a few minutes ago, if you were to take the historical map for redlining in Indianapolis, it's an almost perfect match. So those historical inequities, those historical marginalizations, the economic deinvestment, that continues to present. in our work today. So what we're doing right now is we are reaching out to the community to say, these are the themes that we are trying to tackle. Can you provide us some feedback? Can you provide us some ideas on how we can make sure that this meets the needs of the people that you serve in our community? So I'd like to walk you through these 6 themes. And I do have an ask while I do this. If you have a community partner or a community advocate or someone who springs to mind that you think might have insights on that theme, jot it down, please share it with me. I'm currently sending out surveys and doing in-person and virtual interviews with community partners to make sure that the actions we take around these themes are appropriately informed by our community.
Can I ask a quick question before you proceed?
Yes.
With the 6, just a quick one. When you talk about engaging with the community and reaching out to the community, how is it that you're reaching out to the community that is primarily deaf and hearing impaired or those who are blind? What type of strategies are there? Is that later on in the report?
It's not, but I can't answer that. So at the moment, one of our primary partners in this area is Easter Still's Crossroads. So they are actually consulting with us on a project that I talk about later in the presentation. So they're helping be a connector into that community. We're also meeting with BOSMA in the near future. And I recently met with the CEO of Accessibility, who gave us some really valuable and useful feedback to help inform our work in that area. So when we engage with the community, essentially the advisory panel brainstormed about 70 community partners that they identified who were working in the digital inclusion space or were somehow related. And then Garrett maintains a list of diverse community partners, about 100 people on there. So between those 2 lists, I have been reaching out through email currently with an option for a survey or to meet with me in person. I have a public calendar that can book time with me. And we're getting ready to move into the phase of taking up the phone and calling people. I hate to interrupt their day, but we've contacted about 120 people and we're seeing about a 10 to 15% response rate. So I just want to make sure that we're reaching out a little bit more intentionally. And also attending a few upcoming community meetings to try and meet with people in person and hand them a physical survey that can complete in about 5 minutes. So at the moment, we are just really trying to make sure we get connected where we can.
2 other sources might be the Indiana School for the Deaf.
Yes.
And the Indiana School for the Blind. I was trying to see whether or not they were listed in there. And
Yes.
so they would be an excellent source for you, especially since there's young people going through and becoming adults. They're
Yes.
a great resource.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe Easter Still's Crossroad was hoping to make a connection, at least with the School for the Deaf for us. I'm not sure about the School for the Blind, but I haven't had my meeting with BOSMA yet, and I suspect that they might be a good connector. So thank you for that. So your packet has 2 versions of the themes. The version that we're seeing here is what I call the headline for each theme. But towards the end of the packet, there are 2 pages where there's basically a summary, a paragraph that summarizes the intention for that theme for longer term reference. But I'm going to give you the hand wavy bird's eye view just in the interest of time today. So theme number 1 is helping bridge the digital divide. The intention of that one is basically we know that our in-person branches are a physical bridge out of the digital divide. So what do we provide in our branches to help address this issue? Theme 2 is connecting this work to the library's mission for lifelong learning. And we included under our digital inclusion umbrella, not just digital literacy, but also STEAM, and STEAM in the broadest sense of the term. So not just do children have access to science, technology, and engineering programming, but also do adults have access to information about careers in those areas? So the full age range of STEAM. So theme 2 is basically thinking about what can you take home, what can you access from our website, what are those sort of self-directed materials that guide lifelong learning, including staff-developed resources. Theme 3 is around improving tech accessibility. We focused heavily in terms of ability needs for that theme. However, we also are including underneath there language needs and also sort of cultural relevancy, cultural competency, and ensuring that we're mindful of unique needs of some communities. We know that, for example, if you are an individual who might be targeted because of your identity in a public space, that perhaps we should be offering online classes in addition to in-person classes. So those types of considerations sort of get grouped underneath that accessibility theme. Theme 4 is developing staff tech skills. In the middle of this process, we switched from Office 2010 to Microsoft 365 and our public computers to Office 2021. And that gave us a direct view of how we can continue to invest in our staff skills so we can make those steps forward to new technology confidently and be prepared to support our patrons. Theme 5 is sort of outward focusing. So how do we engage in advocacy and partnerships as we've outlined in our strategic plan? So this is where we're looking at hosting meetings where other digital inclusion practitioners can come and share what they're doing and we can cross-train. We're looking at engaging with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance for a national level advocacy. And also I'll soon be working with the Digital Equity Task Force through the state to look at the state's 5-year plan for digital equity. And that's a particularly important one. The Federal Infrastructure Act and the Federal Digital Equity Act have made available some significant funding over the next 5 years. And so we're trying to make sure that we're poised to support ensuring those funds get invested in Indianapolis. And then lastly, we have theme 6, which is all about our exciting programs and sort of the in-branch experiences and classes that we offer. We wanted to give it its own separate home. That's probably the most common way that people engage with us around digital inclusion and digital literacy. So we wanted to give that a whole theme where we could make sure that we are being intentional and planning for success in that area.
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
In our packet, we don't have focuses on theme number 4, number 5. Is there, I'm quite sure that's probably intentional for a reason.
It was purely for the interest of time. I was trying to keep this to 10 minutes and just this alone, I kept it into 20. So I gave you some highlights for some active work that we were doing around some of these themes. If you would like highlights for the other themes, I can follow up and include those. Because the roadmap hasn't been published in the time that we hope, there's just active work going on alongside the drafting of that roadmap. So the ones that I am highlighting are theme 2, 3, and 6, but I'm happy to answer questions about the other.
I think this is all, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think this is all quite important now because we were just talking about how everything's moving over to a digital focus within the system. And so I think if we have some more time next time that you can come back, I don't know, Mr. President, to go over some of those things so we can get a more in-depth look at it to see what we can do on our end to help as well.
Sure. Well, and I also I suspect to be back sometime in the coming quarter with the final version of the roadmap. So I could also provide an update at that time as well.
I have a question as well. You may be doing this already, because I know how important internet access is to people who may not have it at home. Do you know, or can we extend hotspots to as far as we can into our parking lots so people can get that?
I know that we did that temporarily during the pandemic. I'd have to consult with Dee and Shanika in our IT department to see what the status of that is. We are expanding our actual take-home hotspot program. We are hopefully planning to expand that out to 4 additional branches in the coming quarter. So we're looking to double the hotspots you can take home from, I think we're currently at 110, and we're going to take that up to about 510, so almost double the number.
How does that work? How does the digital hotspot work?
Sure. So essentially we slap a barcode, just like we do a book, onto a hotspot. We check it out to you and say, please bring it back in 21 days. At the end of the 21 days, if you don't return it, we deactivate it to encourage you to bring it back. Currently, we don't do renewals, unlike our books, purely because the program is so popular. On an average day, if you walk into a branch that runs hotspots, you're lucky if they have one for you to take home. It's just overwhelmingly popular. And then the Chromebooks, they're a little bit less popular. We do have some people who depend on them heavily. And the great thing about that program is at the end of it, we ask them to complete a survey to tell us how they're using the devices. And we can really see the impact on the community. We see stories such as, I'm living in a domestic violence shelter, and this is how I'm completing my online education. I use this to gain housing and to find a new job to stabilize my life. We just get some equally heartbreaking and inspiring stories out of how that program is just being moved.
Are most of those hotspots given to the most impacted targeted area that you outlined in your map earlier?
Pretty closely to that. So I use something called the Digital Divide Index, which was created by the Purdue Regional Center. And it looks at digital divide through multiple metrics. So it looks at educational attainment, poverty levels, disability levels in the region. So things that might indicate that you were at risk for a digital divide rather than just do you have access to the internet or a computer. And we found the most highly digitally divided or at risk digitally divided areas in the city. And that's who we targeted for our 10 branch expansion. And we're continuing out from that. So the next expansion, we're balancing that need, but also with staff capacity. Borrowing devices is a time commitment. It takes a little bit more care to lend those out. So we're splitting our expansion between branches who are next in terms of digital divide needs and branches who have the staff capacity to support the program.
President Salinas, in the library field right now, something that we're doing is advocating for broadband access because you only have so many hotspots. So even if we multiplied it by 10, it would not be enough for the need. So what we're trying to work on in the profession is to give broadband access to all of the people that need it, very much like you do your utilities. Because as I was, when I was working with that individual that was seeking information but didn't have access to the internet, it's almost like you can't do anything without an email address or be able to go on social media or be able to go to a website. You're just really blocked in. People don't even have like an address where you can write or even call someone. So it's a real concern, and it's something that we're looking at broadly nationwide, not just here in Indianapolis.
And joined to that is the Indianapolis Public Schools are looking at how do they make sure they advocate for it as well. And so joining forces, because many of the families, young people in the schools, their families don't have broadband access, which is fast enough to keep up with home and home educational initiatives, et cetera. So that is
My biggest thing is
too.
we have a lot of clients in my work that look for hotspots so they can use their mobile devices to make phone calls to call us, to call other important people in their lives. So it's important. Not everyone has internet. So that's why I was hoping to have access to the parking lot at a minimum during library hours. So we can.
And I can follow up with Shanika and Dee, their interim manager, and definitely follow up where that project is. I do want to point out, and I really want to respect your comment about how in general in the library world, they're talking about having access to broadband. One program that is currently available is the Affordable Connectivity Program. So that provides $50 of credit towards an internet connection for those who qualify. And we had the FCC come and talk to our staff to talk about the enrollment process for that. Every time someone brings a hotspot back, we provide them a flyer with information about that program. So we're trying to encourage pushing them towards a sustainable access. And some of the affordable connectivity providers actually will give a hotspot. So if you don't have a stable address or a home that we could run a broadband line to, there are ways that that program can support connectivity. And one of the great things, one of the qualifiers for that program is if you have a student who is going to a school where they qualify for a subsidized lunch, then that is an automatic qualifier. And if the entire school qualifies, then that means anyone who is sending a child to that school qualifies. So it can really give broad access to that program. It's just a matter of making sure that the families hear the information. So I agree. The library would love to partner with IPS and local schools to make sure we're helping support enrollment in that program.
You would love to partner with IPS?
We currently do not have an existing partnership. We talked with a few people early on, but I've lost contact of where those conversations were, but I can follow up and
Please do.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that covers our slide on Chromebooks and hotspots. It's a widely popular program. One of the great things about that program also is it drives library card enrollment. About 15% of the people who check out hotspots and Chromebooks, they got the library card that day, so they borrow that device, which is always the other things that I'd like to highlight in terms of immediately actionable steps that we're taking is under number 3. So Shanika, our IT and innovation director, is given her team the task of helping improve tech accessibility in a broad way to make sure that every branch has something that helps support people who have an ability need. So that's where we're partnering with Easter Seals Crossroad, as I mentioned earlier, and they are consulting with us to make recommendations on what we should purchase to have these workstations in every branch. And then our central library and currently Glendale also have what we call assistive tech labs or assistive tech workrooms. However, what we found with those is that because they were so localized, if you have a visual impairment, if you have mobility need, going to another location is a huge barrier. So we're looking to address that with this project. And we hope that by Q2 of next year, we'll be launching those workstations. And at that point, we'll do a big promotional push. We are looking at providing staff training alongside this so that when people come into the library, there's also a staff member who has some disability awareness training to be respectful of their needs. And then we're also examining maybe piloting this at 1 or 2 branches to get some direct feedback from members of the disability community so we don't launch them all out and then finally tweak them all. And that is Miguel, Shanika's project manager, has been leading the charge on that, and we're really excited about it. That's Shanika's baby. And then I can't come talk to you without talking about programs because I am in the programming department. So I always struggle to come up with what I should highlight to all of you because we do so much great work around STEAM and digital inclusion. So today I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the Info Zone. One of the things that they are doing is they are really leaning into what we call emerging technologies. So providing access to families and youth who probably wouldn't have the ability to purchase an emerging technology to use at home, but they can provide access to that while they're in the space. So 2 ways that they've done this in the past year is during their summer camps, they used a VR virtual reality to explore the world, and they used augmented reality to create a digital aquarium. So kids could draw a fish, they could scan that into the computer, and the fish would come to life in augmented reality, and they could see it in the digital aquarium, which of course kids love. The ability to create something and see it turned into technology is just fantastic and engaging. And then they also used it with their after school explorers. This is actually one that I love. They use virtual reality as a brainstorming tool as part of a larger project. So the youth were actually creating murder mystery games, but they just use the technology as an additional tool to encourage some creativity and brainstorming. So using technology so that's not the only focus of the program, but just sort of showing how it can enhance what you're doing is great. Now on the adult side, we are getting ready to launch in the coming month North Star Digital Literacy. So you might have noticed earlier in the year, we launched something called LinkedIn Learning. And LinkedIn Learning is great for high school users who want to learn coding or pivot tables, some of those advanced skills. It also has some great other competencies on there. But the thing that we found with LinkedIn Learning is you really had to know how to use a computer to navigate it. And everything was video-based, it wasn't hands-on. So when we think about someone who might have a lower computer skill, they couldn't really engage with that content. So North Star Digital Literacy is going to sort of bridge the gap. It's going to provide access to a self-directed platform that is designed for adults with literacy needs. So that includes digital literacy needs, but also it's created by Minnesota's adult literacy program. So it's also mindful of individuals who might have lower English literacy. So that means you create an online account, and there's a process for a staff member to create an account for someone if they're not great at creating a password or can't log into their email to get a code. So we're able to create an account for someone, and then they're able to enroll in a self-directed online training. And that training will do things like read the content aloud. It doesn't expect you to be able to read the content. It slows down the pacing so that if maybe English is your second language, you can catch the words a little bit easier. And it covers everything from computer basics to things like Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Google Docs. They just launched a telehealth module, and they just converted both the computer basics And the telehealth module, they translated that into Spanish, and they're looking at expanding the additional modules into Spanish as well. We actually held back our launch until that had happened because I didn't want to launch another English language only platform into the system. So we're really excited. We're going to pilot this at 6 branches and have them enroll people. At Central, we're also going to pilot an additional piece of this, which is we're going to offer certification so they can come and take a proctored exam and demonstrate their skill. And we'll be able to issue a certificate on things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Google Docs. So that can give someone, for example, who might have educational attainment from outside of the country. Sometimes it can be hard to help people understand, well, this is the skill level that I have. We'll be able to have them create some additional certifications that they could highlight on a resume. So we're looking to hopefully partner and consult with the Immigrant Welcome Center, who's our new neighbor down at Central, to talk about how we can use that platform to reach their community. And then we are also currently reaching out to Indy Reads and a few other literacy partners as well, because we suspect there might be a benefit there.
Let's see, there's a place where you can partner with IPS, the newcomer school.
Okay.
Yeah, it's located at Northwest, and they just have families that come in from all over the world.
Right.
So.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm working with Sakura, our immigrant outreach specialist as well. She's running her world languages class this fall and next spring. So we're also looking at connecting her partner into that platform to encourage enrollment. Since this fall, she's working with individuals who speak Spanish, but I think she's expanding to some additional languages next year.
You had mentioned certifications.
Yes.
Who is authorizing the certification?
So North Star Digital Literacy authorizes certification. So my staff have to undergo proctor training with them. And then once we're trained as proctors, North Star maintains the actual certification for Patron. But we have the ability to log in and like print the certificate or give them a digital badge that they could carry with them in a digital manner. And then I also have to highlight, it has a complete curriculum that goes along with it. So there's a set of learning standards tied to adult basic education that they use. And they have an entire curriculum that teaches to those standards, which will allow branches that previously might have struggled to create a computer class. They can pull from this curriculum and in less than half the time have a class that they can offer to the community, or they can use it for one-on-one appointments with patrons as well. So I'm really hoping that this will, in the coming year, expand our ability to support the lowest level of digital literacy training needs that we see. So very excited.
You said that lots of this work is very time consuming on the staff. How does that play itself out in terms of time dedicated to doing this?
So it's hard for me to speak from branch perspective because I've always been based out of Central. I do know that one of the things that happened with my team in the past year is we transitioned from only teaching at Central and reporting to Connie Scott, our Central arm, to reporting to the adult services arm in our programming department. And part of the reason for that move is that branches struggled to find the time and the staff with the skill set to provide these trainings. So now my staff go and we try and visit every branch at least once per year with a series of digital literacy trainings. And if all goes well, next year we hope to have visited every branch at least twice. But of course, in the pandemic world, things are a little rocky sometimes. So we're not going to promise it, but we're really going to reach for it. And I do want to.
Why I ask this because one of the things that we've partnered with in terms of IUPUI to the library is making sure that we can provide additional support, like interns who are working on digital literacy. And in our School of Informatics, that's a major thing. And so maybe we can really work to be supportive through interns that can multiply your ability to be able and not put as much heavy lifting on some of the staff.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd love to be able to make those connections with Andrea Copeland, who is the chair for library and out of our School of Informatics. Love to make that connection for you.
Absolutely. We'd love to make that connection. I've been emailing with Wendy Johnson, who's our volunteer coordinator, and we have been talking about how we did believe that providing sort of those classes would be a perfect opportunity for a college student looking for a short-term engagement.
And if we're considering interns, we need to loop in human resources
Yes.
department, because obviously they would be part of that. And there's also a bandwidth issue that goes to that. But it's definitely something we can explore. And Martin University has a work to education program as well. So there are a couple of stones that we can turn over to be able to tap into.
Ms. McKenzie, thank you so much for your presentation.
Absolutely. And I just one final thought. There are 2 slides. Everything that I presented you today is not my work alone. It's based off of a fantastic set of staff who have contributed to it. So I've included their names in the presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I just want you to know that I really appreciate everything you said. I didn't understand a lot of it because I'm at that lowest level of digital, and I'm serious. Must have been absent the day they started talking about it. So I will really be in touch with you.
We would love to
Thank
host you at Pride Center.
It is the way of the future. All right. I think we're good, right? All right. If there's any board members that has items that they feel are of interest that we should consider in future board meetings, please let me know. I know Dr. Murtada had an item, but on the social worker.
Absolutely. I wanted to make sure that we follow up on some work that got started when the previous interim was working with us, and we hired a social worker. And what does it mean for us to really think about human engagement and partnership services? Right now, we don't have a functional unit. We just have a singular person that tries to go around to all of the different sites and different branches and do the work of forming partnerships and meeting the unmet needs that go at that get to the heart of a lot of our relationships with the larger public. And so this idea of integrating with collections, with professional services, but most important with outreach is a really important part of what we need to do and think about. Like I said, it's not a functional unit right now. The library has functional units within it. To meet those needs, we need individuals who can really work with the social worker, but also do professional development. And so I'd like for us to think about and actually name something that I'd like for us to come back and talk about, which would be a functional unit that deals with human engagement and partnership services. Those partnerships that she was mentioning, that about digital divides and partnerships that deal with social work, that deal with human services. One social worker cannot do it. We hired a person, but that person doing everything for all of the branches is not a functional unit. So how do we do that? How do we address it? And how do we elevate that work that got started? I forget when we hired Yana.
It was
April, maybe, or before that?
maybe June, maybe
Maybe.
June. She just had her 1-year
I
anniversary.
will
She
say
just
this.
had a 1-year
I will
anniversary.
say this, I'm bored of looking into expanding that program. I think it was innovative. It made national news. But it was focused on a specific issue at Central. And she is going to other branches to figure out if there's a need there or what the need is at our other branches. To the degree we can find out how big the need is within our library system. I think we need that information so we can look at it, the course of expansion, if that's the route that we need to go. Because it was developed for a specific need at Central because of all the work that was happening there. But I'm sure that need is also being duplicated at our other branches. To the degree, we don't know. And that's what we need
Yes, we do.
information.
And the only reason why I'm saying we do is because what happened is we had interns that did a really effective study of what was happening at the branches as well. It was exciting, in fact, because we had IUPUI and I think Marion University students that began to do a study at the branches as well and found out even more about the needs. So you're right on point, Judge Salinas. That initial need was at Central, but it really is a need that expands far beyond. And how do we actually use that data that they've collected? Because you're
Yeah, I
right.
don't disagree with that. I just want to see that documentation. Okay?
Yes,
But I agree, that we need to look at that, because I don't, again, I'm not disputing that we have a need. But I want to make sure that we have everything, that the metrics supports our extension.
Absolutely.
All right, the last thing is our next board meeting is September 26th, 6:30, and we'll be at Library Services. And with that, I will join the meeting.